Welcome back to Nick Lenz's movie review, episode number 142. Yep, this one I'm working on the second to last film released for the MCU, released just this year. And unlike with Captain Marvel, where I didn't have a physical copy, this one I do. Avengers Endgame. Yes, the film that the MCU have been building for the past 11 years. Yep. Movie starts out basically kind of where last time left off. We have Tony Stark and Nebula just wandering through space, playing some games, him leaving some messages, and then they're picked up by Captain Marvel. Yep. Probably picking up right where she left off in post credits, and they go off to space to find Tony, and they go back and cut to Avengers the training facility, where who's there? Cap, Black Widow, War Machine, um, Otaka, that's her, along with Hawkeye, Thor, and Bruce Banner. And of course, Rocket. And of course, well, they're all moping over the loss what happened about a week prior. And then they hear a noise outside, and it's basically a Quinjet. Yeah, come back from space, and Pepper's there. When the heck she got there, the film does not explain that. It's like, oh yeah, Pepper's alive. Didn't get dusted like everybody else did. And, well, they figured, okay, we have a pretty good idea where Thanos is. Of course, they come up with a plan. Of course, they kind of introduce everybody to her. And, of course, they had this whole teasing moment of basically, well, Thor basically put his hammer aside. And, of course, he pulls his hammer right to him. He has his Stormbringer. And he's like, oh, I like her. Because he doesn't flinch while basically him having his hammer come to him. So I go to space, find Thanos on his foreign planet. By the way, there's a visual nod to the Infinity Gauntlet, where the ending we have Thanos his suit hanging as a freaking scarecrow. Yep, and this visual was also seen in the Infinity War comic book, not the film, the comic book. And they just happen to find Thanos' house. They find Thanos. They chop off his hand, the one that had the gauntlet on it. Or had the gauntlet, but the stones weren't there. And they're asking, like, where's the stones? He's like, I destroyed them after I did what I did. And of course, they all get mad. And then Thor just walks up to him and beheads him, and says the line that Thanos said in the previous movie, should have gone for the head. And then they all walk off, and then we have a 5-year time skip. Yep. And then we have basically, apparently, people are kind of starting to move on after basically half people just disappeared. And Cap started his own relief group. And here's the thing about this relief group. A couple people part of this group are in fact the directors making a cameo in the MCU. Yeah, one of the Whispers appears as a gay man. Yep. Jarl also makes first appearance in the MCU thanks to this particular film. He appears in the cameo. And we kind of slowly reveal what's going on with people. Apparently, Iron Man has gotten married to Tony Mary Pepper, and they have a 5-year-old girl. Yep, that's not revealed a little bit later. Hawkeye, of course, is become a vigilante. He has become Ronin and Stark, and he went to Japan and killed a bunch of Yakuza. And he mentions, though, like, it's like, why are you after us? Why are you taking us out? Because Thanos took out half the planet. Yeah, the thing is, most of the planet have no idea who the heck Thanos even is. And what's everyone else been up to? Well, Black Widow's hang out at Avengers HQ, where Heroes turning back from blonde to red. And what about everyone else? Well, let's see. Nebula and Rocket basically continue with the Guardians of the Galaxy up to. Captain Marvel went back to what she was doing, and Otaka simply just kind of taken over Wakanda. It's not thoroughly explained what the heck happened with them. And then of course, something interesting happens. We cut to a warehouse where we have Scott Lang's van. Apparently, it's been here since Ant-Man and the Wasp. A mouse shows up, activates a projector that brings him out of the microverse. And he probably thinks it'll be just a few hours. And then he realizes, though, it's been 5 years. And then basically tells the Sword people to basically get him out of there. Eventually he does. He takes his van straight to the Avengers training facility. And he feels though that what basically to the Avengers. Oh yeah, they really what happened to Thor. It's quite weird, and what happened with Hulk. Yeah, so he kind of explains the whole thing about the microverse and the fact that for him it was only a few hours. For everybody else, it was 5 years. And kind of explains what's going on with the whole quantum stuff, and they need to figure out a way to go back. They kind of come up with the idea to go back in time, but need help to people. First, they go find Bruce Banner, who's kind of merged into the Hulk and become Professor Hulk. And in case you're wondering, has this happened in a comic where Bruce Banner's personality has taken over the Hulk? The answer is yes. It has. It happened toward the end of Peter David's original run for the book back in the early 90s. Actually, it happened about 10 issues prior to the series in issue 400. Yeah, that's when that happened. So this has happened before, where they kind of merged two personalities into one. Yeah, where basically Bruce Banner as the Hulk is actually less beefier. Yeah, he's a little bit thinner. Appearance-wise, he kind of reminds me of when Amadeus Choka gave a lot of the gamma power demo from being Hulk to Brawn. It's very similar to that, and they must take inspiration for that, despite the fact there's Amadeus Cho in the MCU. They go me off with Tony, who basically is with his adorable little girl, and apparently Tony's working on a secret project. What secret project is it? Well, Pepper's birthday's coming up, so make her own suit. Rescue. Though when they show it later, it's actually a different color. Appearance-wise, when they show it later, it's the same exact look as it does in the comics, except different color. Yep, it's a completely different color than it is in the comics. And they also meet up with Thor later on, while bringing everybody back together. Thor apparently has put on some weight. Yeah, him, Korg, and me somehow survived. It's never explained. Of course, all the main Asgardians formed this little Asgard town in Norway. Basically the place where Odin basically suggested they form. This is a nod to what happened with the Asgardians in the comic books, thanks to the JMS run, when Asgard reformed near Braxton, Oklahoma. Though no Braxton, this is basically a nod to that. The difference is basically Asgard is not a giant floating city near the town of Braxton, while in the case in the movie, Asgard's become an actual physical town on the ground, as floating in the air as it was before. So it's not that. Oh yeah, apparently Thor comes down just to get some beer, and he had put on a ton of weight. Apparently he's doing nothing but eating pizza, drinking beer, and playing video game, playing Fortnite. Yeah, I personally have never played Fortnite, so I don't know how it is. So yeah, and apparently he spends all half the time also threatening to kill people online. Yep, that's basically what he does. And well, Rocket and Hulk try to convince him to come with him, and he just turns down. Then he comes with him anyways later on. After everybody meets up back at Avengers HQ, then they kind of explain the origin of the Infinity Stones, mostly, and they kind of explain what happened in previous movies. Like they explain what one of the apparently the Aether, the one that gave Malekith his power, turns his half face black. Apparently that's an Infinity Stone, and that apparently is basically they have to do a little bit of time traveling. Of course, they go to 3 movies. Though they also go in there. They actually have 4 different time periods. Though they have to go one particular time. They have to get one jump. They have to get 2 gems from one time period, and a few others different from a few other periods. And they split out the various teams. Hawkeye, of course, comes with them because he wants to bring his family. So, where do these people go? Okay. They have Cap, Iron Man, Hulk, and Ant-Man go to the first Avengers movie. Yep, they go to the first Avengers movie. And there's a comment about Chris Evans' butt. Yes, there's a comment about there. Okay, what about everybody else? Well, Nebula and War Machine go to the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Thor and Rocket go to Thor the Dark World, where we see Rene Russo reprising Rose Frigga. And of course Thor basically comments on how basically apparently Odin had his own wine cellar. It's humongous wine cellar. That's the size of an armory. He really wanted to go down there, but he really wanted to avoid his mother. Oh, in case you weren't, now they do have Natalie Portman show with movie. Though, from what I've heard, when she shows up here, it was actually, believe it or not, unused footage that was from Thor: The Dark World. So yeah, so Natalie Portman's appearance in this movie is pretty much stock footage. Yes, stock footage. So basically, Rocket took out a stand-in, and of course, Thor meets up with Frigga, who's actually shocked to see that Thor's put on weight. And so he has the Stormbreaker. He basically reaches out his hand for his original hammer, and he gets it. He's like, "Yay, I'm still worthy!" Excuse me. And as the case of what happened with, well, when they get to the Power Stone, uh, for War Machine and Nebula, they go down there, they knock out Star Lord, and War Machine points out, "Is this guy this much of an idiot?" And Nebula's like, "Yeah, he really is an idiot. And my sister's in love with this idiot." Yeah, I thought that was so funny. And then they go to the chamber where the power gem is, and they go get it. War Machine goes back to the future, no problem at all. But because it's too nebulous in this time period, Thanos, from this time period, this is actually in 2014, picks her up, scans her memory. It turns out she's actually from the future, and Thanos like, my plan actually succeeded. I think I'll accelerate my plan even further. I think I'll swap out this Nebula with my Fabula, send her to the future, and then have her bring my Armada to where the gems are. But what about Hawk? What about Ronin and Black Widow? They go to Vormir. Yep, they go to Vormir. Probably ask for when the heck this was. Probably during the events of Infinity War. Probably before Thanos got there. They run into the Red Skull, and I'm thinking though, what did these two know who this guy is? Because these two were Shield agents. They probably have read this. I'm sure his profile was probably a mandatory reading at the Shield Training Academy, and yet they apparently don't recognize him. Despite the fact, as a viewer, I mean, I of course have seen the Avengers movies, and no, this is not the original actor. Like I mentioned in Infinity War, this is a complete different actor. I have heard the reason why the original actor won't come back to play the character is because he doesn't want to, despite the fact he was contractually obligated to. But Marvel's like, yeah, we really want to use him, so we're going to get a replacement actor for you. And I would think that even Black Widow would know who this guy is because Red Skull is infamous. I mean, anybody who works for S.H.I.E.L.D. knows who this guy is, and he's probably if he was still alive, he'd probably be on the top of the most wanted list because of how much war crimes this guy has committed. This guy's war crime could probably fit basically Black Widow's Red Ledger because of all the despicable stuff he did during World War II. But no, they had to basically kind of do what they did with Thanos and Gamora, sacrifice one of themselves to get the Soul Gem. Black Widow herself sacrificed so they get the Soul Gem, and they go back to the future no problem. As in the case what happened with the others, well, Hulk goes to the Sanctum Sanctorum to get the Time Gem, and instead of running Doctor Strange, he runs into the Ancient One, played once again by the awesome Tilda Swan. Yep, they have a conversation for a while. Of course, he explains that apparently Dr. Stephen Strange actually gave Thanos the gem willingly. She's like, okay, I'll give you a gem, but be sure to put and she's like, I'll be sure to put everything back once I'm done. She's like, I'll hold you to that. As for the other three, well, they go off to the Avengers Tower. We kind of see what would be like almost like unused text footage, but this is all completely original. And of course, what we have, I thought this was so funny. And you have Iron Man and Ant-Man hiding, and he's like, and Tony's like, man, that suit did not look good with your butt. So he's referred to as an ass. and and then of course because Ant-Man is a big Captain America fan, that's America's ass. That's basically the line he says in the movie. So I did not make that up. And then of course we have it where they actually get the gem, and well, apparently they run into Jasper Stillwell, and of course they also have Robert Redford make a return. Yeah, this is before they reveal he was actually the head of one of the heads of Hydra. You see him briefly, and of course Loki somehow gets away. I actually missed this part because I went to the bathroom at this point during the movie, and Then, like, then we have basically Cap basically saying "Hell Hydra" to Jasper Stillwell. That's actually a nod to something that happened 3 years ago. A line that got the writer death threats. Yes, from Steve Rogers, Captain America #1. Yeah, because of Captain America saying that one line, that writer got humongous amount of death threats. Excuse me. In the film, I don't think the writers of the film got basically death threats. Nick Spencer got death threats for that stupid line. The writers of the film did not because, well, that's a nod to it. And then present day Cap basically went from, I'd say, I think it's like 2023 Cap meets with 2012 Cap, and they have a brawl. Now, apparently, this particular Steve Rogers is actually a stunt double, though he basically has CGI of Chris Evans' face in 2012. They have a brawl, and he mentions, "Oh, Bucky's alive." That distracts him, and he, of course, knocks him out. And of course, Steve, after seeing his own buddy, says, "That is America's ass." Okay, but the gem gets lost, thanks to Loki of all people. And then basically, while Hulk and Ant-Man return to the future, they have to figure out, okay, we have to get time gem, and they figure out, okay, there's only one place it could be to get this particular gem. Like, do they go back to World War II? No, they go back to the 1970s for some reason. Yeah, why the 1970s? No idea. So they go back in time and basically kind of split looking for it. Tony meets his father, Howard Stark. And I think this is the same guy who played the older version of Stark, who appeared in Iron Man 2 and the first Ant-Man movie in a flashback. As for why he's here, well, he's the head of the facility because he was, of course, one of the colonists of S.H.I.E.L.D. And, of course, thanks to also seeing we get a chance to see Edwin Jarvis. By the way, same actor for Agent Carter TV shows basically makes that show canon with the MCU. Yep. Steve, of course, goes off on his own, reads some profiles. They also need to get some Pym particles to go back to the future. And apparently Hank Pym was working at this facility, and we see a very young Michael Douglas. Yep, very expensive CGI for this. And he basically hides in an office running people, and he runs into Peggy Carter. Yep, Peggy Carter, who's probably at this point, probably in her 50s, I'd say. But she looks great for a woman, probably in her 50s. I'd say she probably is in her 50s, because I think that when she first met Steve back in the 40s, she was probably in her mid to late 20s. This has been like 30 years at that point. She's probably in her 50s. That's my I don't think she's in her 60s. I think probably 50s. Cap, of course, seeing that, because everybody has to basically do the mission. So they get the gem, they get Pym particles. Yeah, Steve's job was to get Pym particles. Tony's job was to get the stone. They did. And then they go back to the future, and everybody gets back there. No problem at all. And basically, Bruce Banner decides, I'll put on the gauntlet. He puts it on. They make a makeshift gauntlet. Put all the gems there. And Tony tells him, okay, I want to bring everybody back, but keep the timeline intact. He's like, okay, snap. And he doesn't know anything happened yet. That wasn't until Scott Lang decided to look outside and you see birds returning. He's like, okay. And then an explosion happens because that is when Thanos decided to come to the future. Yep. And of course, we also have it where, well, while this is going on, just before the explosion happens, Clint's phone rings and it's his wife, who he hasn't spoken to in 5 years. Well, she was actually blipped anyways. Yeah, she was blipped by Thanos. Yeah, they revealed in a flashback that she got blipped by Thanos, and he was sort of under house arrest. He had a bracelet on him, probably because basically his parole officer was probably dead at this point. He probably got removed. So that's probably the reason for that. That's probably the reason they go around the world killing people. No problem at all. With everybody back, and of course, Thanos coming in the future, he pretty much assaults the new Avengers training facility. And of course, well, then we have Hulk, Ant-Man, and Rocket basically hiding the Infinity Gauntlet, while everybody else mostly fights Thanos. And of course, they all brawl for a while. And of course, at one point, he decides to sit down, like, he must be waiting for something. They all go out, and Then, of course, while during all the fighting, Steve somehow picks up the Mjolnir, and Thor's like, I knew it! Yep, I knew it. Yeah, basically a callback to Avengers Age of Ultron, where apparently Steve Rogers is worthy of lifting the hammer, which is also a nod to the comic books. Yes, he is worthy of lifting Thor's hammer. Excuse me. Then, and of course, well, they get in a fight for a while, and Cass thinks he's going to lose, and then he gets a call on his earpiece. It's like, Steve, you there? And then he says a line from when they first met back in Captain America Winter Soldier. He says, on your left. And then a portal opens. Yeah, these portals were established in the Doctor Strange movie. I forgot to mention that. And who steps up first? Why, it's the Black Panther. And then we have the Ravengers, the Guardians, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, the Sorcerers. Like, everybody shows up. And then it's a big, humongous army. And of course, Wong is basically like, and Doctor Strange's like, do you think we have enough? And Wong's like, I think I should bought more? And Strange's like, yes. And then with everybody there, and then Steve says a line, people waiting 11 years for someone to say, Avengers assemble. And of course we have a bunch of Valkyries too. Why not? And then we start a humongous battle. Like a traditional, 300 style battle. Everybody just of course, while this is going on, we have Spider-Man reunites with Tony, first time in 5 years. And Tony, first we actually see him, gives him a hug. And then they decide to also, while this is going on, okay, we need to hide the gauntlet. Okay, let's, we get to my van. And Steve's like, Embassy ugly brown van. And then I think it was, oh yeah, and also, Pepper shows up in her rescue outfit, and her outfit is blue. In the comics, it's purple. Don't mind the change, but love to see her in the outfit. And then while the battle's going on, we decided to play some football with the gauntlet. Passes around. Eventually, Spider-Man gets it. It gets passed around. There's 7 of them people, and of course, while the battle's going on, all of a sudden, mid-battle, we have the Avengers ships point their guns originally on the ground, and then they start pointing at the sky. And I was like, what? Why are they shooting up the sky for? And the pair points out, though, something's coming from the sky, an object, and it's Captain Marvel. Smashes to the ship. Yep. And then she gets her hands later on the gauntlet, and then he needs some. And Spider-Man's like, you need some backup. And she's like, she's got plenty. She's got Wasp, Pepper, Valkyrie, pretty much all the female, even Scarlet Witch shows up. And she fights Thanos like, you took everything from me. And he's like, I don't even know you. Yeah, he knows nothing what happened 5 years prior to this. He knows nothing. And she's like, you will. Yep. And then eventually she has the gauntlet for a while. And then she basically, Thanos tries to get the gauntlet from her. And he basically headbutts her. And she no-sells the headbutt. And the other way he got the gauntlet away from her is to basically cheat by taking out the power gem. And eventually he's about to use the thing to snap. And he's like, wait, where are the gems? And basically Iron Man's got him and he's like, I am a god. And Tony's got him and he says, the last line he says, which is not the first Iron Man, he says, I am Iron Man. And all of Thanos' army just disappears, turns completely to dust. Every last one of them, including the Black Order, who basically make the return in this movie. And thanks to basically Tony Mixwell's gamma radiation, the first person to basically comfort him is Spider-Man, which makes sense. And of course we have Rhodey there. And of course Pepper knows that how close that Tony is to Peter. Kind of politely brushes him aside, yeah, I got it. And he dies surrounded by his best friend, his protege, and his loving wife. Then we cut to a funeral where we have Tony Stark's memorial, where everybody who's been in the MCU at this point, who's still alive, is at the scene, along with these people who are there who are not at the battle. But here, we have May Parker, Peter's aunt, is here. We have the kid from Iron Man 3 who's actually grown up. We have General Ross. Even Nick Fury makes his return. Yep. And they figured, okay, we need to return the time gems, the gems to proper locations. So apparently, and of course, Mjolnir, they all mentioned these Mjolnirs returned, but it was taken from time streams and these returned. So Cap volunteers because he's from out of time anyway, so it makes sense. He returns them, and then of course he thinks it'd be a really quick ship, and then and they basically bring it back like, hey, did it work? And they look over to the side, and they see an old man sitting on the bench. It's Steve, and basically it's Chris Evans in old man makeup. So apparently, after return all the gems, including Mjolnir, he apparently used what left of the Pym particles to go back to 1945 to live out his life with Peggy. And well, he doesn't say what exactly happened during that period of time. Then he just gives his shield to. Also, at the funeral scene, we also have Hank Pym shows up too. Why not? And basically, Cap gives Sam his shield. They can become new Captain America, but that particular thing is not explored until the Falcon Captain America, the Falcon Winter Soldier series on Disney Plus, coming out in a couple years. We also have a final coda for Scott Lang, Hope, who actually came back thanks to reversing the snap. And of course, you have this wonderful moment. I forgot to mention this. That when Scott comes back, first thing he does, looks for his daughter. That's the first thing he does. And he looks at this wall of people who died. He thinks, like, oh no, is my daughter on this? And he looks names. He says his name because the people think he got caught in the blimp as well. People don't know the exact number. And he's like, whew, thank God, not her. And he goes visit her. And apparently she's aged up 5 years. She looks like she's 18. And apparently, despite the fact this is a complete different actress, apparently he recognizes her. Yep, it's Cassie, grown up. Basically, I think she's about 18 at this point. I'd say about 15, 16-ish. They don't really say what happened to her mother, Peggy. Yeah, they don't mention what happened to her or her stepfather. They don't mention what happened to her. Possibly they're cop in the blimp. They don't really say. They probably explored this in the Ant-Man movie coming out in a couple years. And of course, last time we seen the movie, like she shows up once again at the end, basically in a wonderful group shot of her, Hope, and Scott basically coming become a family. As for the case of Pepper, she goes back off with. We have this wonderful moment of we have Happy basically talking to. I think that possibly Happy might be either Happy or Rudy might be Morgan's godfather. They don't really say, just that he's just an old friend of hers, and he mentions like she could really go for a cheeseburger, and Happy's like, your dad's favorite food, your dad loves cheeseburgers too, so they probably went up and got cheeseburgers. I mean, ask everybody else basically for what happened to Captain America Civil War. Like, do any of these people get pardons? People participating in that? Completely unknown. We don't really explore that. Hulk does not recover from having his hand damaged thanks to all the exposed gamma radiation he got in his hand. Yeah, he doesn't heal. And the movie ends without a post-credit scene. Yep, first movie without a post-credit scene. This movie is roughly over 3 hours long, but of course it is really, really good. And it's well worth sitting through the 3 hours. There's also one really good scene of Hawkeye talking to Scarlet Witch about Lost. He's talking to her about the Black Widow. Basically, the next time we see these two, for Clint, it'll be his own Disney Plus series. Same thing with Wanda. In the WandaVision series, where somehow Vision's alive. Yeah, that's somehow explained it there. As for the Hulk, no plans for him. Doctor Strange getting a sequel. As for Thor, he goes off with the Guardians, and he jokingly refers to them as the Asgardians of the Galaxy. Yeah, that's actually a comic book that actually ended this year. Yeah, after just 10 issues, which I think was stupid. It was a really damn good series. And, well, not much else to say. Now, of course, killing off Black Widow is like, hey, I bet some people point out, hey, Marvel, you do know she's getting a movie coming out soon. Why'd you kill her off for? Well, there is a reason for that. I'm gonna give this movie roughly a 9.5 out of 10. Well, the thing with her movie, it does not take place. It takes place before this film. Like from what I've heard, it takes place after Captain America: Civil War. That's when the film takes place. So, despite the fact this is the film where she died in, the film was set before her death. Yep. And it's going to feature Taskmaster as the main villain, which I'm looking forward to that. Along with the Red Guardian, which I'm also looking forward to that too. Yep. Now, that's particularly it for this particular. I know this one's quite long, but the movie's also quite long too. Next movie review, which I'll probably do a little bit later, along my case closed review, will be a review of the last of the most recent released MCU film, Spider-Man: Far From Home. Yep. But see you next video. Bye.